Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy, and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health one topic at a time. So guys, I've now had my complete series of the Moderna COVID vaccine, and I'm going to tell you about my experience after that second shot, and then I'm going to also address some QA that has come up about these vaccines. So please keep watching. Yeah, so first of all, I do want to take a moment to just plug my channel. I'm so grateful for the way this channel has grown, and I'm just really happy with its development. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider subscribing. And if you want to be notified every time I put a video up, just click the bell. So I had my second shot of Moderna on Monday, February 1st. I'm recording this video on Wednesday, the 3rd. The one day in between being yesterday, Tuesday, it's totally gone in my memory. Yeah, so I felt a little bit bad. I had put something up in the Sandy's DIY Health Advocacy Facebook groups page saying, I'm just not good for this world. I'll check in, in the next day or so, but I had my second shot. And so many people responded with so much sympathy and empathy. It was just so nice. And I almost felt guilty about it because the truth is, as bad as some of these side effects are, and I'm going to tell you about them, there's nothing dangerous about the reactogenicity. It just means the shot is working. And I know that for every person who's able to get one, there are many more who want a shot. So I certainly don't mean to seem ungrateful. And I just want to say thank you so much for all of your kind words. And it was really short-lived. So yeah, my second shot was at 7:30 in the morning-ish on Monday. I felt okay for the first several hours. The arm did get sore, though, sooner than it did after the first shot. Now, I did a video about my experience after the first shot. I'm going to link that video right here. And in that video, it was several hours. I didn't really notice how sore my arm was that time until I had rolled over to lie down on my side many hours later when I went to bed that evening. This time, the arm got sore pretty quickly. Like within the first couple hours, I had to reach up to get something in the cabinet. It was just so painful to reach my arm up overhead. But the interesting thing was it didn't get as sore as it did the first time, and it went away a lot quicker. So it was really sore for the first day, and I'm hardly aware of it now. I did, however, have a lot more reactogenicity overall with the second injection. Now, this is overrepresented in people who are younger. Think of myself as younger. It's just that it's not as common in the elderly. So I'm 55 for a few more weeks. I did experience a lot of reactogenicity. A lot of my colleagues who have had the Moderna said the same thing. And the course of my side effects went pretty much along the same course as anyone else I spoke with. 8 to 12 hours in, I started to get a little bit chilled. And then pretty soon I was very chilled, and all I wanted to do was bundle up. I had a thick outdoor wear cold gear turtleneck under a heavy duty fleece. I was so cold. I just couldn't get warm. Very soon thereafter, I developed a fever, and that evening my fever went up to about 102. That was probably the peak. Now, I happen to get bone pain and skin sensitivity with a fever. That's just normal for me. So, of course, I had bone pain. My hips were hurting. I'd turn around in bed and something would hurt, and then I'd have to lie on something else. Nothing made me comfortable other than a hot bath, really, for that night. Now, when I woke up at about 3 in the morning, my temperature had gotten down to about 100.6 or something like that. And it pretty much stayed right around 100 for the rest of the day. And by that evening, so Tuesday evening, my temperature came back down to normal. So the shot was Monday morning. The symptoms really started Monday evening. And 24 hours later, most of these symptoms had died down. So 24 hours after they start, or 36 hours starting after the injection, very short-lived. It was tough to go through. I don't want to gloss that over just because I think people should be prepared to go through this. Certainly, I think that if you're having this injection and you're not in the elderly category, I think you should make sure that you don't have to go to work the next day or have any important commitments if you got the Moderna. It doesn't seem to be as much the case with the Pfizer. I don't know what I would have done if I had had to be at work yesterday. It was really tough. I was just pretty much laying around. The whole last 24 hours is just sort of a blur. I know that fever must have taken a lot out of me because I woke up this morning, I got on the scale and I was 5 pounds less than I was on Monday. So I know that's all fluid shifting, and certainly I felt kind of dehydrated. I had an entire bottle of a sugar-free Gatorade with the electrolytes this morning, but now it's just crazy. I feel completely fine. And that's another thing that all of my colleagues had said. It's just amazing how you can feel so completely stomped down from this thing and then boom, you're just fine. It's wonderful. So I embrace it. It's easy for me to say now that it's done, but I'm very fortunate and grateful that I had the vaccine. I'm glad that I got the Moderna because I don't think any of us are in a position to choose right now. I was kind of hoping that would be what I would get when a turn came up. I look at the reactogenicity as a sign that the shot is working and my immune system is doing exactly what it's being told to do. Now, with the Moderna injection, it's a 2-week interval until you reach the maximum immunity after the second vaccine. So 2 weeks after I had my second injection, February 1st would bring me to February 15th to have the maximum immunity that the shot is going to give me. Speaking of February 15th, I just want to take a moment to honor my mother's memory. Early on at the very beginnings of this pandemic in the United States, I was kind of just getting a YouTube channel started. I lost my mother and she passed away on February 16th. So the 365th day after my mother's death will be the day that I get my maximum protection from this virus. Now, I don't know if that's a divine coincidence or it's just a poignant fact, but I just want to say that she is missed. So I got a lot of questions about my experience with this vaccine. Did I take any anti-inflammatories? Did I take Tylenol, something to reduce the pain, something to reduce the fever? And I'm going to talk about what I think about taking some of these things around the time of the shot. I also want to address some questions that have come up and concerns, which I have too, about some of these variants and how the vaccines might perform with these new variants that are evolving. So allow me to insert my usual disclaimer, which is that nothing that I say on this channel should be deemed a substitute for the advice of your own qualified practitioner, and I'm not giving any individual medical advice on this channel. That said, let me talk about anti-inflammatories and fever reducers surrounding the time of the injection. So I've heard all different things. People say if you really load up on anti-inflammatories and Tylenol, you might not get so many side effects. I'm not sure if that's true. It sounds correct. It sounds like you would probably not get quite so much of that inflammatory response or that reactogenicity. What I will say is that I don't recommend doing that for a couple of reasons. The first is that the people who took part in the clinical trials were not allowed to have any of those kinds of medications in advance. They could only take them after the injection. So you don't really know what you're going to get if you take something before. Second of all, I'm just going to speak more broadly for a moment about my feeling about fevers. Now, I'm not talking about pain like joint pain, just fevers. I kind of think fevers get a bad rap. This is going to sound quite out of the box, but hear me out. This is just a sidebar because typically when you get a fever, it's not in response to a vaccine. Usually when you have a fever, it's because you've acquired some kind of an infection. So you've come in contact with a virus or a bacteria. The fever is there to take care of that. That's part of the inflammatory response, like a little inflammation is good. And the fever is there to sort of cook that virus. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing. I've had about 20 years of exercising this philosophy. I can think of exactly one exception, one time where this didn't work the way I would have thought. But after years of always taking down a fever, I decided about 20 years ago I was going to stop doing that. And I have found that when I just let a fever cook, now mind you, I'm not talking about a dangerously high fever. If I got around 102.5, close to 103, I think I would take something. I think I would also get some cool compresses on myself. But I'm just talking about a fever. I don't take that down. And what I find happens is that I get past that virus or whatever it is quicker. I find that back when I used to bring my temperature down in response to a fever, things just went on forever. Of course, you'd recover either way, but I just found that I was sick for longer. So I let a fever go ahead and do its job. Now, if I had a fever that went on for a long period of time, like a couple of days, or if I had a fever that was dangerously high, like getting up close to 103, in those cases, I think I would seek medical attention. I also think I would bring down the fever. Under normal circumstances, this is just the way I take care of myself. I let the fever help me and do its job. I decided I was going to handle this vaccine exactly the same way. So no, I did not take any Tylenol, and no, I did not take any anti-inflammatories. Do I think it's okay if you do that afterwards? Yeah, probably. I mean, the CDC says so. In the clinical trials, participants were allowed to do so. I think that's probably fine. Now, anti-inflammatories and something like Tylenol, which is an antipyretic or a fever reducer, are two different things in that the Tylenol will only reduce the fever. I think that if I were going to take one or the other of those, I probably would have opted for the Tylenol and reduced the fever. I think that some inflammation is good. I'm really happy with the way I did it, even though it was a really tough 24 hours. Now, some people have asked about taking antihistamines, particularly in light of like Pfizer. We've seen some anaphylactic reactions, and histamine is part of an anaphylactic reaction. One of the signs of an allergic reaction is the release of histamine from cells, and that shows up on the skin first and foremost. So people have asked, well, what if you take Benadryl or some other antihistamine before you have the injection? Now, that's not recommended, and the reason is that it doesn't blunt the anaphylaxis if you're going to have that. It will only mask it or delay your recognizing the anaphylaxis because you won't have that early sign which shows up on the skin. So no, do not take antihistamines prior to injection. Another series of questions that have come up is the concern that we all have about some of these variants and how the vaccines are going to perform, and what about the monoclonal antibodies. So I think I've talked about that a little bit on my channel before. I was concerned that the monoclonal antibodies would be a problem. They are, because a monoclonal antibody is very highly specific, so it's only meant to be the exact antibody that your body would produce, or rather a synthetic form of that, in response to the particular virus, the particular variant that you contracted. So in fact, the monoclonal antibodies are just too specific to really be effective against a variant that they're not designed for. Better news on the vaccine front, though. So the vaccines do seem to be very effective against the UK variant. The one that is causing a lot of concern is the South African variant, although I think the facts on that are actually better than the news would make it seem. So we've all heard that the Pfizer looks like it's pretty good with the South African variant, but the Moderna looks like the protection is diminished. You've got to put this into a perspective so we have a yardstick against which to measure. So the Moderna vaccine is 94 point something percent effective against coronavirus in general. At least at this point, it seems to be 100% effective at preventing severe disease or hospitalization, because there were 0 of those in the clinical trials. So its protection against the South African variant is diminished. Nonetheless, it is still believed by the experts at Moderna and the CDC that it would provide adequate protection against that variant. And Moderna has said that it's creating this booster out of an excess of caution. I think that's great news. If I had to decide right now, I'd say I will take the booster if and when the time comes, although by that time I think we'll have more data. So finally, I just want to address one more question that came up in Facebook, which is that, is it possible to spread this disease right after having gotten the vaccine? So I just want to say absolutely unequivocally no. The only way to spread this disease is to have live virus. I don't want to get into a discussion about live. Is it alive? Is it not alive? Active. I think we all know that it's not a living thing. It's active or not active, but we call it live virus. You have to be replicating live virus, not a piece of a spike protein of the virus. You have to be replicating live virus in order to shed live virus. That's how this disease is spread. In the early days when you first contract it and before you even feel sick, that virus is replicating like crazy in your system, and you are shedding it in your respiratory droplets all over the place. There is no way to do that when all you're producing is a spike protein. So please, nobody worry about that. And please, if you hear something like that, try to put it to bed before it grows legs. Try to correct people of this notion, because people really shouldn't be afraid for that reason to get the vaccine. Okay, so let me just thank everybody again for your kind words in the Facebook group. I am noticing here and there people are telling me when they're getting vaccinated. Some people have started their series, so I'm really excited to see that some of that is happening. I hope that as a country, we can get this moving along at a much faster clip so that more people have the opportunity to get the vaccines. I'll be interested to hear more about your stories. I hope this was helpful. I don't want to scare people when I talk about my symptoms, but rather I want people to understand what to reasonably expect so that they're not scared and think that something's going wrong. I am grateful that during that 24-hour period where it got pretty tough after the injection, I wasn't at one time tempted to give a call to the number that they gave me in case there's a problem. It never seemed that anything that happened was worrisome. It was just uncomfortable. And that's really because I was told what to expect. So I hope that was helpful. I'm very grateful for everybody's well wishes, and I'm very grateful to Moderna for this revolutionary vaccine. And until next time, be well. Bye-bye.